From the most insane zombies multiverse of all time to an Easter egg that's been 10 years in the making, this is 40 Black Ops 7 Zombies fact. One of the most famous things in the history of this mode has got to be the impossible Easter egg from BO3. It had the community in a grip at the time due to its massive level of mystery and very strange connection to the KN-44. It was even a massive talking point as zombies evolved into the future. And although we may be many years down the line since it was first revealed, it's still a huge talking point even in Black Ops 7 because the devs just had to give us an absolutely amazing throwback reference for this. If you take the AK-27, this game's version of the KN-44, and stick this thing in the Pack-a-Punch machine, it will come back out with a brand new name, the Impossible Easter X. Something that the BO3 fans will definitely appreciate, so when Jason Blundell said this,
I think I may be talking about this in about another 8 years' time.
I guess he was right, but maybe not for the reasons he meant at the time. Ashes of the Damned is full to the brim with secrets as I've just shown you, and that includes a hidden boss fight that most players didn't even know existed. To take on this unique encounter, all players need to do is to search the very dangerous areas just outside of Ashwood, and on either the journey to Exit 115 or the Cosmodrome you should be able to find some golden paw prints as long as you've gotten hold of Death Perception. Following the trail and interacting with each and every one will eventually lead you to the final print, and this will teleport you into a secret area featuring a pretty strong version of the Xerxer. Although it may seem nearly impossible at first with your weapons having been snatched away from you, fortunately you can actually find them on the ground nearby to give you the best possible chance to take down this beast. And if you manage to do so, you'll be handsomely rewarded with some great loot, including weapons and perks. However, if you decide you're way too skilled to be taking down this monster using your loadout, then you can grab hold of an item that will send your profits sky high. Because if you make the fairly insane decision to just leave your weapons on the ground and take on the Xerxer using only a blade and somehow manage to escape with your life, you'll be gifted the Claw Talisman. Or better yet, if you don't want to make it that difficult and you were lucky enough to get the Necrofluid Gauntlet, just grab that from your loadout and it will still work as long as you're only using the melee attack. Very much like the cursed version from Black Ops 6, the Claw Talisman will give you permanent double points, and fortunately it won't have the major downside of costing you essence every time you get hit by a zombie like that one did. However, the unique thing about this talisman is that the double points only works for melee attacks on the undead. But I mean, come on, you just proven what a champion you are with a blade anyway, so I'm sure you'll be fine. But I'm not sure if even that is as cool as Treyarch referencing one of the biggest memes in the community around 10 years after it originally took the internet by storm. If you're a big Zombies fan, you may well remember this classic quote from Richtofen back in Zetsubo no Shima.
I'm sorry, I don't speak Japanese.
Well, with the glorious return of our OG characters of course happening in BO7, including Edward himself, the devs absolutely had to remind players about this huge meme with everyone's favourite maniac scientist dropping this quote during Ashes of the Damned.
I'm sorry, but I don't speak Japanese.
And this is just one of the many reasons that these characters truly are the zombies' goats. And one of them even has his own personal Easter egg in Ashes of the Damned, and it's pretty crazy. If you decide to play as good old tank Dempsey and are willing to spend some time out in the wilderness near the Cosmodrome where you can be taken down by Ravagers at any minute, you should be able to find a crashed rocket, and very close by is actually a set of dog tags. Grabbing hold of them will transport you to a forest featuring a pretty stomach churning twisting camera cutscene. And following this, players need to survive against some fairly OP versions of the undead whilst even turning into a disciple to try and guarantee that they get the job done. All while experiencing an awesome Tank Dempsey only Easter egg. And that's not it, as the whole side quest culminates in you being rewarded with a hidden Dark Ops calling card. I guess there's only really one thing you can say to that. Every Zombies fan is always looking for new perks, right? From Vulture Aid to Widow's Wine and even Elemental Pop, most new entries in the franchise often give the community something fresh, and Black Ops 7 is no different. With the devs of course dropping Wisp Tea for players in Ashes of the Damned, and it can be fairly useful in the right situation, but the interesting detail here is actually the machine itself. For the longest time, pretty much every single perk machine has had a slot on the front for it to be paid for using coins, just like the retro dispensers in real life. And yes, Wisp Tea does have that, but it also has something new. This is the first ever perk machine in COD Zombies with a chip and pin system on the front. Treyarch really decided to bring this thing right up to the modern day. But I'm not seeing contactless anywhere for Apple Pay. Sort it out, guys. Fortunately though, if you're a fan of that new perk, you don't even need to worry about using the machine and spending your hard-earned essence, as you can actually get this thing for the big fat price of 0 points through a very cool Easter egg. Head over to Van Dorn Farm and interact with the TV upstairs until you can see a set of twins on the screen. Keep spamming it after this until just one of them is visible, and then head to the basement where you should be able to find them playing noughts and crosses, and then they'll disappear. Back to the TV once more to find a channel where both twins appear once again, and then one final television spam until both of them are missing from the screen completely. And you can then find the two of them together outside playing, and approaching them will cause another miraculous vanishing act, rewarding you with some very useful loot and most importantly a free Wisp Tea perk can. Thank you for that, Treyarch. I mean, we'll take it. Anything that can save us money in the dark ether is always appreciated. Surely there is no doubt though that the Warden is one of the most interesting characters that has been added into the Zombies universe in a long time. And he definitely has some pretty awesome voice lines in both Ashes of the Damned and Survival. But one of the best has to be when the Ravagers show up and he says this.
I'd say fetch me their soul, but it's a little late for that.
So it's of course referencing two different things, the first one being this.
Fetch me their soul!
And the second being this. I mean, it's a very fair point. The Ravagers can't exactly fetch the crew's souls, can they, when the Warden's already done that himself? He's a smart guy, I won't lie. It's a great reference, but how about a little nod to one of the most popular maps of all time? And you're probably sat there now thinking, oh, what does he mean? Is it Origins? Maybe Drak, Mob of the Dead? Well, it's actually none of those. Because if you manage to avoid the Ravagers for long enough and take a trip over to Ashwood, you can find this place with a very familiar looking name, the Ruby Rabbit. Where have we heard that before exactly? I'm joking, obviously. Everybody knows it's Shadows of Evil. It's one of the most famous places on the entire map. Let's just call it an adult establishment that is of course closely connected to Jessica Rose. Well, Treyarch amazingly decided to reference it in Ashes of the Damned with a building and the exact same name, with it also being an, what's another way to describe this that I haven't just said? Let's go with an 18+ nighttime party cabin. Yeah, I think I did a good job there. I don't think the YouTube police will be on my case about that one. Either way, it's a great nod to an awesome map, alright? And I would say let's move on, but it's not the only building Ashwood has that you need to take notice of. Because if you also played Black Ops 7 Part 1, aka BO6, I'm kidding, I actually really like the game. But if you did play that and dropped into Liberty Falls, you probably remember seeing the yummy Freeze ice cream store. And it would have probably sold some fairly decent desserts if it wasn't in such a state. Well, it's not looking any better for the brand in BO7 to be honest, as it's actually made a comeback in Ashwood. Well, I say a comeback, but this version is quite clearly way older than the Liberty Falls shop. Being in this part of the map, it honestly looks like it's come straight out of Red Dead. There is absolutely zero chance I would be eating there. If there is one thing though that the COD Zombies community can agree on, it's that certain enemies were insanely overused in various games, with the biggest offender probably being the Mangler. This guy was everywhere. Firebase Z, Outbreak, Liberty Falls, Terminus. My god, it was like Treyarch had already paid him his full salary and just wanted to cram him in anywhere they possibly could. Well, it turns out that our playable characters feel exactly the same as we do, as they are completely sick of dealing with this enemy too. Because once you return to the spawn area in Ashes of the Damned at a late enough round, the hulking Uber Klaus will attack you out of nowhere. And if you manage to dispatch that thing, then if you're playing as Grey, she will say exactly what we're all thinking.
Well, on the bright side, it wasn't a bloody Mangler.
If you're looking to get back to Janus Towers in a hurry though, you're obviously going to be doing it in Old Tessie. Let's be real, most players aren't casually jogging around in between locations here unless they're a total maniac. Well, it turns out that even though everyone's favourite bus driver Ted might not be in charge of this vehicle, so he can't just straight up leave you behind like he did in Transit, he still does have the ability to completely troll you if you don't show him enough respect. Because if you decide to lay into him with a few well-placed shots, then this dude can just decide to lock you out of using old Tessie. Fortunately, it's not for very long, but damn, even this many years after transit, he still can't take a joke. It's only a few casual bullets, dude, chill out. Earlier I mentioned about the incredible Pack-a-Punch name that referenced the well-known impossible Easter egg. Well, I reckon I can go one better than that. Everyone knows the Warden, right? No, I'm not talking about the soul stealer that spends his time in the dark ether, I'm obviously referring to the guy in charge of Alcatraz Island. And interestingly as well, there is actually a weapon in Black Ops 7 Zombies also called the Warden. And so, what exactly does this gun change into once you stick it in the Pack-a-Punch machine? You guessed it, Brutus. The more commonly used name for the Warden of Alcatraz. I've got to take my hat off for Treyarch on this one. Any kind of Mob of the Dead reference is always massively appreciated. And so is an easy way to get insane numbers of points by doing pretty much nothing. One of the most useful features added with BO7 has to be the big change to Gobblegums that completely changed how you can use them if you're not interested in activating a particular consumable. The devs decided to add the ability to crush Gobblegums instead of using their actual benefits in order to give yourself free essence. And this of course increased exponentially with the rarity of these consumables going all the way up to 5,000 points for an Ultra. Well, if you're smart with this, you can actually maximise your profits if you crush them at the right time, as this feature is 100% affected by double points. So if you break down an Ultra Gobblegum when that power up is active, you can give yourself 10,000 points in an instant, which is absolutely game changing. And it's not the only fresh feature added with Black Ops 7 that could be extremely useful though, as the Sight Grenade could do some pretty interesting things when used in the right circumstances. Everyone knows that you can use this thing to turn a zombie to give you a few extra teammates that can help you wipe out a few of the undead, but the Sight Grenade can be so much better if you're smart with it. Why just throw this thing at standard zombies when instead you can chuck it at the huge hulking bear known as the Zersa to get this monster in your squad? This thing can absolutely obliterate the undead for the time that it's doing your bidding. The only tragedy is that it doesn't last a little bit longer. The Sight Grenade madness doesn't end there though, I mean quite literally with this next one. Obviously, as I just mentioned, as long as you know what you're doing with it, then it can definitely be a benefit, but what about if you're a total noob? Well, if that's the case, then it can genuinely drive you insane, and I'm not exaggerating. If you accidentally hit yourself with a Sight Grenade, then prepare to lose your mind, because you will end up seeing visions of your own character staring back at you and following you around with their weapon. It's pretty freaky, but I suppose that's what you get for having terrible accuracy. Anyone who played a ton of old school zombies will recognise the quick revive jingle, right? I mean, it's well known for sounding like this. But apparently the soul-stealing Warden of the Dark Ether just decided, I don't think so, things are going to be different around here, because if you grab the perk in BO7, it will instead sound like this. So apparently Treyarch made the choice to switch things up there, because although they still sound similar, there's no doubt it's been changed. I guess they got some different music deals going on in the Dark Ether. Either that or the Warden really wanted to save some essence on the artist recording the jingles. Speaking of saving some essence though, you can do exactly that with a very useful Easter egg. All players have to do is head to Blackwater Lake and interact with a conveniently placed trophy near the water. Following this, they can grab a free throwing axe and really get going with their challenge of making sure they're super accurate on some target practice. Repeatedly hit them over and over again and you'll be rewarded with the arrival of our best friend Mr. Peaks, followed by some really good loot. It can be hugely useful with it ranging from salvage and essence to things like free high rarity weapons. If there is one person though that could complete this trial, it would have to be Tank Dempsey. The guy's an absolute hero. Well, it turns out he's much more like the average zombies player than you might think, because if you happen to be spamming the mystery box, there's a chance he'll say this.
Man, I would spin counterclockwise and crouch 3 times if I thought it'd get me a ray gun.
Yeah, I think the old school zombies players know exactly how you feel, Tank, as this is of course a hilarious joke referencing all the ridiculous theories from back in the day that suggested some insane collection of steps would supposedly get you the ray gun from the box, but of course they were all absolute nonsense. But something that definitely is not is the arrival of a brand new perk can to Black Ops 7 that tons of players don't even realise exists. I think we all know that over the years there have been loads of random perk drops, and when picking one up it would just casually stick one of the available ones in your hand for you to drink, but what if you actually don't pick it up in BO7? As the devs actually designed a brand new one just for these drops. It's a literal mystery perk can with its own special look and a big question mark on the side. There's even a label for it in the game files and everything. Good work, Treyarch, things like this are so cool. And while we're on the subject of perks, let's touch on the return of a much loved feature that hasn't been seen in COD Zombies for over 10 years. Each game in the modern series usually has some kind of challenge system, with Black Ops 6 making them Sam themed and BO7 relating them closely to Ted. And if you manage to complete these tasks, you can get some great loot and the possibility of a hugely popular mechanic from Black Ops 2, and that is Perma perks. A set of buffs that when drunk in Black Ops 7 can't be lost when going down, and they are so useful. But there is a caveat here, you have to have already bought every single perk in the map. So I guess whether or not it's worth doing all of that to get one is kind of up to you, but imagine having an entire loadout of perma perks, it would be pretty OP. But something that anyone can find is easily discoverable at Blackwater Lake, and frankly it has no place being in the Dark Ether. Fans who spent some time flying around Ashes of the Damned in Old Tessie will obviously have seen a huge number of power switches, but the vast majority of them look like this. It's the classic Treyarch Zombies design that's been featured in a ton of maps, from Varuk to Gorod Krovi and even Blood of the Dead. But crazily, they don't all look like that, because there is one that you can activate at Blackwater Lake that is taken from a totally different game in the series, and it looks like this. And no doubt dedicated fans will be able to tell you that this is in fact the power switch that was used in Infinite Warfare Zombies across most of its maps, including Zombies in Spaceland. It being in the Dark Ether is fairly insane, but when you think about the fact that it's found in the cabin of a supposedly murderous movie director, very much like Willard Wyler from IW, it starts to make a lot more sense. Particularly when you combine it with the fact that Black Ops 7 has a Dark Ops calling card which seems to throw together things from different worlds, creating the most insane Zombies multiverse of all time. First off, it's incredibly easy to get this done, with the title being Box Addict. It stands to reason that all you have to do is buy 30 weapons from the mystery box, simple right? But the calling card reward isn't even the cool part about this, it's actually what's showcased in the image. Because if you look closer, you can see that although it does feature the mystery box from Ashes of the Damned, it also shows a number of others, including the version from Mob of the Dead that was only ever used in that map. And it goes one stage further and pulls in things from completely different games, such as the 3D printer from Exo Zombies, which was that series version of the box, and also the magic wheel from Infinite Warfare. So it seems like all of these universes are smashing together in the most amazing way possible. So I'm sure that most Zombies players will know when you jump into Black Ops 7, the menu will of course sound like this. But if you're not someone who hangs around before loading into the game or never goes AFK, then you might not have realised that if you leave the game unattended for long enough, then you can hear this. Yep, that's actually a slightly changed up version of the classic Black Ops 2 Zombies menu music, which of course famously sounded like this. And so yeah, with BO7 being a sequel to Black Ops 2, obviously the devs needed to reference that awesome Zombies mode 2, which we all know featured a couple of the greatest maps ever made. There are tons of Easter eggs in Ashes of the Damned, some give you free perks, easy loot and even great weapons like I've already mentioned, but what about something that allows you to take a break from the endless waves of the undead? And trust me, it couldn't be easier. There isn't really any major steps to this apart from opening a few doors at the Cosmodrome, with the only slightly challenging part being the fact that you've got to venture out into the unknown between POIs and make your way to either the lost cabins where it can be found near this briefcase. Other possibilities are on top of the crashed ship and also not far from the Cosmodrome. If you manage to survive the journey, just interact with the controller that can be found there and you'll get to take part in a minigame that will seriously test your driving abilities. It's not the only thing you can find out there in the dangerous Ravager territory though, because this is the Dark Ether after all, the trash can of this dimension. So of course it's gonna be filled with tons of things that have been thrown away or defeated by us. But if you've been driving at breakneck speed to avoid having old Tessie wiped out or not paying attention to the compass at the top of the screen when you're on foot, there's a very small chance you might not have noticed that overhanging one area is actually the corpse of an Orda that we defeated numerous times back in Cold War at the end of Firebase Z and in Outbreak. I guess we can look at this thing as a bit of a trophy after kicking its ass. And it's not the only boss that's been chucked into Ashes of the Damned after we battered it out of a previous map, as not too far from the Order you can discover the remains of the good old Z-Rex from the Shattered Veil. We may have wiped him clean off the Colton Manor estate, but it's still gotta be one of the best boss fights of all time. Everybody knows about the green spores around Ashes of the Damned, right? You can use the fumigator on them and create a mini defense mission in order to get some free points and easy salvage. I mean, come on, it's pretty obvious. But these things can actually get you something way more useful if you know what you're doing. If you do exactly the same thing again, but this time also use the toxic growth field upgrade on the spore when you fumigate it, then when you complete the defense as well as the other rewards, there's a chance you'll also be gifted a raw Ethereum crystal, meaning you can pack a punch your gun without even having to pay. A great way to get set up early when playing this map. And if you pay attention when roaming around the Dark Ether, you can notice that the devs at Treyarch genuinely added some awesome details to the game that make certain locations in Ashes of the Damned feel way more unique. They could have just stuck with one zombie type and chucked them all across the experience, and realistically fans probably wouldn't have cared. But they actually went further and thought, no, things need to be a little bit more special here, with POIs having specific looks for the undead spawning there depending on the theme of the area. With some of the best examples being retro old school dresswear if you're currently zombie slaying in Ashwood, or completely different astronaut and soldier style corpses if you've made the choice to spend your time at the Cosmodrome instead. It's just one of the many things that make that map so awesome, and the locations feel so legit. And if we're talking about the Cosmodrome, we should probably cover how you can make things there a little bit easier for yourself with one of the game's simplest Easter eggs. All you've got to do is explore the area slightly and find this tiny gap in the fence, and shooting straight through this doorway here at these well-known double blades, you'll be rewarded with a free full power drop. Could help you out in a tight spot if you get cornered by the undead. And it's not the only one in Ashes of the Damned, because if you're more of a fan of Van Dorn Farm and instead spend your time training over there, you can once again get hold of a small reward to give you some assistance when things get a bit too crazy. All you gotta do is aim up to the top of the nearby tower and boom, a free insta-kill drop. It could be the difference between life and death when getting swarmed by zombies. But as useful as that is, it's nothing compared to one of the most important secrets in Ashes of the Damned that continues a classic tradition that's existed for a very long time in the world of zombies. Treyarch and the fans of this franchise absolutely love music Easter eggs. It's some people's favourite thing about certain experiences, and they exist in so many maps. And so, if you want to be able to listen to the absolute banger music track that is Turned to Ashes, all you've got to do is search out a few pairs of headphones in various Dark Ether locations. The first can be found in the roof of an extremely dark corner of Ashwood, the second is very well hidden over at exit 115 in a vehicle near the gas station, and the final set is actually at spawn, concealed away in the server room. Once you've found all three, just get ready because it's time to take on the zombies with one hell of a track playing. And while you're listening to that absolute heater and doing your best to slay the undead, if you're not very efficient when getting a limbs, there's a chance you could end up seeing a pretty awesome secret. Ravagers are known for not only chasing you around the map at breakneck speed, attempting to obliterate you, but also for eating loot that's left on the ground. So if you don't focus on taking them out quick enough, then you can of course end up losing some useful items from the floor. However, it might just be best to leave them to do their thing so you can see this amazing detail. Because if a Ravager ends up eating all the loot they want and are fully satisfied after a nice hearty meal, they'll literally sit there celebrating by banging cymbals together just like the classic monkey bombs. Followed by them just straight up disappearing without even paying the bill, may I add. Ugh, you gotta hate thieves. But you definitely don't need to worry about paying a bill, because although I mentioned earlier about being able to get Wisp Tea for free, it's not even close to being the only perk that you can get for absolutely nothing. There's tons of them that all involve collecting 3 different items from around Ashes of the Damned and mixing them in a conveniently placed cup at the diner. Like, you can grab a free quick revive if you manage to get hold of some cleaning fluid from the spawn area, a fish that you can grab at Blackwater Lake, and a stim shot from the Cosmodrome control room. Yeah, probably the most disgusting and dangerous possible combination of items for a drink I've ever heard of. But anyway, as I said, stick them in the cup at exit 115 and boom, a free quick revive perk for some simple item collecting. Probably even better than that though is being rewarded with Jug for free, and the triple threat of items you need for that is a jar of milk from the barn at Van Dorn Farm, a plant found growing near the Janus Towers, and a huge number of eggs from the diner. And once again, stick them in the cup for another vile sounding concoction, and it's Juggernog for the wonderful cost of 0 points. Or if you're more of a fan of fitness, why not grab yourself a free stamina by getting hold of some coffee beans over at the Ashwood General Store, lemons from the Van Dorn Farm cellar, and finally some gasoline that's behind the garage at exit 115. I was about to say this one sounds way nicer. I mean, coffee, lemons, not bad, and then petrol. That's a no from me for the drink, but I'll definitely take the free perk. And finally, if you're feeling a bit sluggish, what about speed cola without having to spend any points? All you gotta do here is get a guarana plant from under a truck at Blackwater Lake, cayenne pepper from the Ashwood store like earlier, and some sugar packets from the diner. And just like everything else, it's all gotta go in that classic cup for you to get the free perk. And to be honest, out of all of these, if you're going to force me to drink any of them, it would have to be this one. As if getting these perks without even having to pay wasn't already good enough, it gets even better when you discover that because you obtained these from a free reward side Easter egg, it 100% does not affect the perk prices that increase with the more you buy. So if any of these 4 are the only ones you've got on hold of, then anything else you grab from various machines around the map will start at the base perk price of 2,500 points. It's absolute genius. Shout out to the devs for not screwing us over on this one. It's not all about perks though, because even some other Black Ops 7 mechanics are also hiding some very cool details that reference things from previous games. Although Exfils may have originally been added in Cold War, with players' aim of course being to survive in order to get picked up by Raptor 1 and the helicopter, and it was exactly the same in Black Ops 6 but with Strauss being added into the mix as well. Of course, that was not going to work in the Dark Ether though. You're not getting an air vehicle in there, are you? So things had to change. So of course, Treyarch added this interesting looking yellow phone booth as the way for players to leave their game before they get taken down by the undead. And I'm sure it looked very familiar to eagle-eyed players who've played Cold War and specifically Mauer de Toten, as this is quite clearly heavily inspired by the phone booth that can be found in the city streets not too far from the Berlin Wall. And not only that, but it can also be found in the Cold War Zombie cinematic where Samantha Maxis uses it to call Weaver. Such a cool way to connect that game closely with Black Ops 7. But it doesn't stop there though, because if you're skilled enough to successfully exfil after surviving the intense lockdown and taking out the HVT Xersa, you will of course see this portal, pretty different from the other Dark Ether games, right? And tons of people will know exactly what this is supposed to be, but for anyone who didn't play Black Ops 3, it may be a total mystery. This is in fact the famous house from Revelations where the souls of the Primus crew are sent to be safe under the protection of Dr. Monty until it all falls apart, ending in a showdown with the Shadow Man. As the modern era of zombies goes on, the Ether and Dark Ether just become more and more intertwined, with all sorts of crazy items making their way over from the original timeline, including this little thing. Up to this point, in terms of the Dark Ether and the mystery box, it's only ever looked like this, the classic version that's the most famous from the series. Well, not anymore, as Treyarch decided to add the awesome looking stone version that old school players will recognise immediately, but if you're more of a modern player, you may never have seen it before. And I wouldn't blame you, because it was only ever featured in one map, and that was Origins, one of the greatest experiences of all time. It showed up here and then was never seen again. Well, until Black Ops 7 that is. But something or someone that's been important in the Dark Ether ever since that story began in D Machine is Mr. Peaks. He was all over the place, from Easter eggs to showing up in the mystery box and snatching it away from you. This freaky looking little guy became even more of a major player in Black Ops 6 when he got his own field upgrade, but it turns out that apparently someone in the Dark Ether was not happy with that and decided to do something about it. Because if you look closely inside the impressive vehicle Old Tessie, you can witness a complete tragedy. Poor Mr. Peak's head has been taken straight off his body to be used as part of the gear stick. It was even shown in the gameplay trailer for Ashes of the Damned. I don't know who the hell thought this was acceptable. You leave Mr. Peaks alone, is that clear? The guy is an absolute legend.